Welcome to The Explainer. So, let's set the scene. Have you ever walked into a truly well-run retail store? You know exactly the feeling I'm talking about. The staff seem to be moving with absolute purpose. The floor is literally immaculate. And as a customer, you just intuitively know exactly where you need to go. Everything just feels effortless. But today, we're going to break down exactly why that feeling of total effortlessness is actually a carefully crafted reality. Let's dive right in.
What you're experiencing when you walk into that kind of space is what we like to call the perfect store illusion. Behind that remarkably calm surface you're seeing, a store manager has been working for days, sometimes even weeks, to make everything look that incredibly easy. It's kind of like a duck gliding across a pond, right? Above the water, it looks super peaceful and graceful. But right beneath the surface, they are paddling furiously. That proactive behind-the-scenes management is the real secret sauce that creates this perfect illusion.
To see how the best managers actually pull this off, we're going to break down three core pillars today: managing the product, preventing retail loss, and building independent teams.
Starting off with Pillar 1, managing the product, or as it's known in the modern retail world, becoming an intelligence node.
You know, what's really fascinating here is just how much the expectations for managers have evolved. Back in the day, preparing for a big visit from a product manager basically just meant making sure your stockroom was tidy and your shop floor was squeaky clean. That was the old way. But today, there is no way that cuts it. Product managers are looking for something vastly more valuable. They want the new way, which means direct customer intelligence backed up by cold, hard numbers.
And that brings us to a phrase you have absolutely heard if you've spent even 5 minutes in retail. I love this design, but do you have it in a larger size? Now think about the product manager sitting all the way over at head office. They don't spend their days walking the shop floor. They literally never hear a customer say this. They rely entirely on the store manager to be their eyes and ears on the ground and capture this raw, unfiltered feedback.
So you might be wondering, what exact kind of intelligence does a top-tier manager actually need to gather? Well, in the weeks leading up to a visit, you've got to track exactly what customers are asking for that you don't even stock. You need to keep a close eye on which items are just sitting on the shelves for months, mostly because they're probably overpriced. You absolutely must identify those new lines that are just flying out the door. And crucially, you need to know your physical stockroom space limits like the back of your hand. Framing this data conversationally, like pointing out that your average transaction value jumped by 8% after a specific launch, is what turns an improvised, casual chat into a highly professional briefing. That's the edge that gets a manager heard at head office.
Okay, moving right along to Pillar 2, preventing retail loss. This is all about becoming the environment architect.
First things first, we've got to clearly define the problem here. Shrinkage is the industry's umbrella term for goods lost to theft, damage, or even just administrative errors. And listen, this isn't just some minor annoyance. In premium retail, where a single jacket or bag might cost hundreds of euros, the impact of even occasional shrinkage is completely massive. It's becoming a seriously growing concern across the entire industry.
To really tackle this shrinkage problem, a manager has to intimately know the difference between the two main types of retail theft. On one side of the coin, we have your classic shoplifting. This is when someone, posing as a regular customer, just takes goods from the floor without paying. Simple enough. But on the flip side, we have fraud. This is active deception. Think of somebody trying to return a product they never actually bought from you, or presenting a completely fake receipt. Both are crimes, obviously, but they require entirely different strategies to detect and stop.
And to put the real-world legal stakes into perspective, just look at the number 200. 200 euros. In Poland, and frankly across a lot of Europe, if the value of stolen goods crosses this specific threshold, the crime immediately evolves from a minor misdemeanor where you just get a fine, straight into a felony. We are talking about a serious criminal offense that can result in a permanent criminal record or even jail time. It's a huge deal. Now, hearing all that, you're probably thinking, all right, time to bulk up security and act like a bouncer. Actually, scratch that. The absolute best loss prevention tool out there is completely counterintuitive. It's simply outstanding customer care. A store manager's job isn't to play security guard. It's to manage the whole environment. Think about it. A shoplifter relies 100% on going totally unnoticed. So an active, engaged team that warmly greets every single person who walks through those doors makes pulling off a theft incredibly difficult and uncomfortable. It is absolutely no coincidence that stores with the highest service standards almost always see the lowest shoplifting rates.
All right, let's jump into our third and final pillar, building independent teams and learning how to become the replaceable leader.
Now, this concept is a bit of an ego check, honestly, because it directly challenges a trap so many people fall into. We call it the indispensable manager myth. If you truly believe that your store would just totally collapse without you there, you aren't actually succeeding as a leader. You're just doing way too much yourself. A manager who has to sign off on every tiny detail hasn't built a robust team. They've just built a dependency on themselves. Making yourself replaceable isn't a bad thing. It's literally the definition of great leadership.
Let's actually look at the management theory backing this up. This stuff has been around since the 1960s. Douglas McGregor's Theory Y basically says that if you create the right environment, people genuinely want to do a good job. A Theory Y approach is all about empowering teams and developing staff, which naturally leads to super high ownership and job satisfaction. Contrast that with the old school authoritarian style. That's all about close control and hoarding all the decision-making. Teams under that kind of manager, they just stand around waiting for instructions. Sure, they might do okay when the boss is hovering, but things fall apart the second they leave, which usually leads to high staff turnover, because your best people just aren't getting a chance to grow.
So how do we actually get to that Theory Y level? Well, it's a 3-step progression. Step 1 is the absolute basics, just assigning a task. Step 2 is delegating the responsibility for that task. But step 3, the magic step, is true empowerment. Empowering someone isn't just handing them a to-do list, it's giving them the actual authority, the confidence, and the real backing to make judgment calls on their own. Delegation is just the vehicle you use, but empowerment, that's the ultimate destination.
So what does this actually look like on a random Tuesday in retail? You'll know you've nailed it when your deputy manager steps up and naturally runs the morning briefing without you asking. It's when your visual merchandiser swaps out a display because it makes sense without waiting around for your stamp of approval. Basically, it's a store that still functions beautifully when you take a day off. And lastly, it's about deliberate succession planning. It's consciously training your people today to take over the roles above them tomorrow.
At the end of the day, a massive international manager promotion doesn't go to the person who micromanaged their store into the ground. It goes to the leader who built a self-sustaining system that kept thriving long after they walked out the door. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to chew on. Are you doing too much yourself? Seriously, take a hard look at your team and your daily routine. If you vanish tomorrow, would your store sink or would it swim? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a fresh perspective on the hidden architecture of true retail leadership. See you next time.